Hi, everybody. I'm John Benninger. Welcome to the next edition of Catching Up. Today, my guest is Brent Tignor, Vice President of Human Resources for Balchem Corporation. You probably know Balchem, but if not, it's a company that's committed to making the world a healthier place by bringing trusted, innovative, and science-based ingredients and solutions to the market. And in those markets, we're talking food, beverage, dietary supplement and nutrition markets, and a longtime customer of ours, Balchem as well. Brent, welcome to the show.
Thank you, John. That was perfectly done. Way to set up Balchem. That's exactly right. And it's great to be here with you and look forward to the conversation.
Yeah, so do we. Appreciate the time. I know you're probably really busy right now in your role with human resources, which right now, with everything going on in the world, is pretty darn important. Always has been, but right now more than ever. I want to get into that, but first, I always like to check in and just say, how are you doing? And those who are close to you and your colleagues there.
Sure. Well, thanks for asking. Doing well, thankfully. Myself and my family here in New Jersey, just outside of New York City, have been in kind of the hot spot of the U.S. But thankfully, we've stayed healthy and safe in the midst of all this. Our families, our extended families, are doing well. So thankfully, personally, have been doing fine. And I can also say the same for Balchem. While it certainly has been a challenge, and we've had certainly some issues to deal with along the way over the last, let's say, 3 months or so. Overall, the company has remained healthy. I think we got out in front of it and put some protective measures in place that have to date proven to I think really help keep our employees safe. Which without that, we're not a company. There's nothing that we can do without our dedicated employees, and so. We've been able to largely remain healthy as an organization, both in terms of physical health and also financial health, even through the bumps that we inevitably have gone through. But overall, so far, so good.
It's good to hear. It's not been easy for any of us, but it's always reassuring to hear that people and organizations are doing well as we all go through this together. You mentioned getting out in front of it, and I know that your company does have a significant presence in Italy. So if we want to talk about, being out in front of a lot of this stuff, Italy was right there. So you've obviously been dealing with this coronavirus situation even before many of us started to. From your perspective, the HR world, how's that been? What are the priorities been, and how's that look now?
Sure. Yeah, we certainly had some conversations about the coronavirus situation as it developed, starting in Asia, and about the various impacts that was having throughout that part of the world, in particular China, and took some steps early on in terms of travel restriction internationally, that sort of thing. But it certainly was a big shock to hear about the outbreak in Italy. It was a bit random. When you think about it, it wasn't something that was an obvious next step in terms of the most significant country impacted outside of Asia. And so we heard about that and immediately went into another gear in terms of information gathering, assessing what was happening locally within the region where our operations are, because the majority of our people actually outside of the U.S. are in Italy. And so that is incredibly important to us in terms of their health and safety, but also to our business for Europe, Middle East, and Africa in particular. And so we had tried to gather as much information as we can of what was happening locally. Everyone was trying to figure it out. Italy themselves were trying to figure it out, so we're trying to figure it out along with them. But I think that while that was certainly a challenge, and that we hadn't had that degree of impact until that date directly to our company, it certainly helped us in the long run in terms of being prepared for the remainder of our locations and sites that were impacted. And so, we certainly did the best we could early days to react to the situation, lean on the CDC, WHO, and organizations like that to make decisions. Local manufacturing organizations in Italy, we certainly leaned on them a lot and put some measures in place early on, but that definitely prepared us as we saw the outbreak occur in the U.S. to understand what worked, what didn't work, the things we needed to think about, and the things we needed to prioritize. And so that ended up being a positive in terms of helping our other operations, but was definitely a challenge early on.
Yeah, absolutely. So the operations in Italy, did they remain functioning through this? Did you have any period of time when you weren't able to function and you had to reopen, or what did that look like?
Remarkably, our operations and our employees have remained healthy. We've actually not had a single confirmed case, which is unbelievable, and especially considering our operations are not very far from the epicenter, which was just south of Milan. Our largest operation is just north of Milan, northwest of Milan, and then another operation more towards the east coast of Italy. But health-wise, remained very healthy. We have not had to shut down the plant one day for this, and so we've continued to operate. In fact, demand has increased over there, and so the team over there has done just an unbelievable job of not only protecting employees, but also continuing to serve our critical customers who they're, then in turn serve their end customers and consumers critical ingredients, whether it's in the animal nutrition industry or the human nutrition and food industry. So it's been an incredible success story. We even asked them to put together kind of a video of their experience over there and what they learned and how people are pulling together, and also on the personal side, because they've really been in a true lockdown mode for a number of months. And so I think we shared that with the entire organization, and the response was very positively, felt very inspired by their story, and kind of gave our U.S. operations just that much more hope and view of the future that we can get through it as well. And so it's been a real success story over there in Italy.
I tell you, nobody would ever design a team building exercise like this on purpose. But it sounds like, and I hear this a lot, and I love hearing it, that people pull together and and that's what we do as people, I think. We pull together when times are tough. And so I love hearing that. And it sounds like across your whole organization, that's what happened, that as people are having to manage through this, not both on the work level, but again, also on that personal level. And as an HR professional, you have to deal with that too. I'm sure you've got people, I know we do at our organization, people with kids, and schools are shut down and everybody's life is completely disrupted. Sounds like your people across the organization have really pulled together and supported each other to help manage through all the different components of this thing.
Absolutely. And, one of our core values as a company is to collaborate and grow together. And I think that while certainly the core value doesn't create that kind of behavior, it just is representative of what we believe as an organization, and I think is seen in everyday life within our company, but also obviously is amplified in a situation like this. And we are a growing company, and everything is a matter of perspective of what's a large, medium, or small company, right? But we're not an incredibly large organization with infinite resources. A lot of us pull together. We wear multiple hats. We get together on special projects, and we have to pull together outside of traditional hardline lanes that we may be in. And I think that is reflective of us as a company and how we operate and how we're able to be efficient, is to pull together and not be bound by silos within an organization, and be able to collaborate and make things happen. And I think that it's been really encouraging in some of these more stressful times to see that be needed more than ever, and to show up so well. And again, we couldn't have done it with our employees exhibiting that day in and day out. So it's been really inspirational to see.
Yeah, and that's a reflection of that culture and those core values that are already in place. You know, if your organization doesn't have those things already in place and people already with that type of a mindset and work ethic and commitment, it's tough to just ratchet that up real fast in times of trouble. So when I hear stories like that, again, it gives me hope because it lets me know that there are a lot of organizations out there and a lot of people within those organizations that they're already committed to these principles and to each other. And that's what you need when something like this unforeseen happens and puts that kind of stress on an organization and all of us as individuals. So I just love hearing it. It's very inspirational. So thanks for sharing that. You know, you mentioned that the ingredients you provide for nutrition, for food, for animal nutrition, these are critical to our supply chain for our food supply, for health and nutrition, human health and animal nutrition and all these things. And from where I sit, with primarily looking at the ingredient space and the consumer packaged goods space, you know, these supply chains have been stressed lately and consumer demand's been all over the board. You've seen spikes in demand for different ingredients and products that people are trying to use to stay healthy and all that. I'm sure with the portfolio of ingredients that you guys have, it's definitely impacted you. Can you talk a little bit about how you and your team have dealt with that? I mean, simultaneously, you've got these crazy supply chain things going on, these spikes in demand and all that. You have disruption to how stuff moves around with shipping and international supply chains. And you've got to deal with all these requirements of the pandemic, like the physical distancing and keeping people safe as they're operating through all this other disruption. How do you manage all that?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, you know, business is challenging on an everyday basis even when you're outside of a pandemic, right? I mean, you have competitors, you've got just, you know, imperfections that happen in supply chains and things that you have to react to or to prevent, and you know, some things that are outside of your control that you have to adjust to. And so just in general, it's a challenge. But you know, especially in the middle of a pandemic, like you said, you're having to adjust to something that no one has any experience with. No one. And so you're figuring that out on the fly. You're expecting the unexpected. Every day is going to be something new and something that you haven't seen before in certain ways. And so it has been challenging. And you're right, it has been a bit, particularly within our portfolio of products, has been largely a positive impact, I would say, particularly in the nutrition space, both for animal and human nutrition, which we are significant players in both of those areas. The food side has been a bit of a mixed bag. Some of our food business has been positively impacted, especially earlier on, by some of the panic buying, if you will, that you saw. And then some has been negatively impacted by the fact that obviously schools have been shut down. Food service has been, you know, significantly impacted. You've got restaurants closed. You've got, you know, a variety of avenues for those kinds of products that just aren't anywhere near what they typically would be. And so we have seen that mix of high demand and softness throughout our business. But I would say overall, Italy was a good example of this. Some of our other operations in human nutrition with some of the, you know, zinc and magnesium products that we produce that are for fortification of the immune system. Obviously, that's in high demand. And so people are demanding those kind of products. And so not only are you having to deal with the unexpected of the pandemic, but now you've got even higher demand than what you were forecasting. And so you're not just trying to limp along and get through it, you're actually having to push your supply chain even harder. And so I think back to that criticality piece has been incredibly important for us. And we've made an effort to reemphasize and highlight that critical role that we play. And, you know, the type of products that our ingredients are going into, which are sustaining the health of people, they're feeding people, they're feeding animals, which obviously part of the overall food chain. When you're doing something like that, which is truly essential, not just a technicality that it's deemed to be essential, it truly is essential, that when you're part of something like that, I think that gives people that motivation and that encouragement to deal with all of these challenges that we're talking about, because it has been incredibly stressful. No matter what position you are in within our company, from the CEO down to the person that's been on the production line for 30 days, whatever it may be, it's a more stressful environment to operate in. And I think that we've really made sure to keep communicating that through our employee base and sharing success stories with our customers and their end consumers around our ability to continue supplying those critical ingredients throughout the food chain and nutritional products. And so that's been incredibly important for us. It has been, I think, one of the silver linings to this is reinforcing how important of a role that we play. And it's just obviously been highlighted through this pandemic.
Yeah, for me, I love this industry that we are in and that we serve. And same thing, it's always been important. We've always been, here to create products and innovations to help people be healthy and help families be healthy and all of that. Yeah, not that you don't lose sight of that, but at circumstances like what we're all dealing with right now, it really brings it home. And I see that too. It's important. It reminds us all that this is not just a job. That this is important. We're part of the solution here to help people get through this. And with all the stress that your people are under, that everybody in this is under, that is helpful, I think, to recognize that we're all playing a really critical role here to get through this stuff.
Yeah, and it's also, I think, whether it's on the professional side and in the workplace, whether it's at home, I think we've all redefined what essential really is.
Yes.
I think that has changed. I think most of us put a much higher priority on various things that took up significant chunks of our time. And once you couldn't do many of those things anymore, you realize, okay, I can live without that. That's not what sustains me in my life. And I think we've all spent time doing things that we didn't do before or haven't for a really long time. Yeah. It's forced people to spend more time with their families, to not be, I'm a sports guy. I love sports. I miss sports. Don't get me wrong. I want sports to come back.
Right here.
But, you haven't had that which I would gravitate towards that, in the evenings. And so you haven't had that. And so you watch movies with your family, you play games with your family, you do things that unfortunately we haven't been doing, I think, in many cases. And I think that's one of the hopefully lasting impacts of this is going to be that redefinition of essential on the personal side as well.
I think you're right. I've seen it. It's happened with our family. Same thing. I love sports, and it's pretty easy to flip on the tube and watch whatever's on, baseball, basketball, hockey, and we've all had to we've had time to look inside and say, what's really important to me right now? And it has pulled people together, I think. And, look at cooking and sharing meals together like we haven't in a very long time, I think. I hope that lasts as well, not only because we're eating healthier food because we're making it here at home, but it's just good to gather around and hopefully, sit down together and share a meal and talk.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. One last thing I want to touch on, a couple things actually, but you mentioned the president and CEO of your company and all the way down through the company, the commitment to this and all that. I spent a little bit of time on your website, and I noticed something that I thought was fantastic, and I just want to make sure people are aware of it, and I would encourage other companies to consider doing it. Now, on your website, there is a weekly COVID-19 update that you're publishing. It's public, it's there, and it's just telling for anyone that wants to see it, whether they're a customer or anybody, what the situation is and what you guys are doing about it. And it's like the most recent update was just yesterday, and I read it, and talks about how your 5-phase plan to reopen the office and the safety first, and it's voluntary, but really just the fact that you're being so transparent, not just with your colleagues within your company, but to me and to everybody out in the industry about exactly what you're doing. Have a lot of respect for that, and I would like to encourage other companies to do that. So not really a question, just wanted to throw that out there and compliment you on it as a company, because I think it's really important right now to have that level of honesty and transparency.
I appreciate that, John, in particular because I've spent a lot of time on those communication updates. So myself and many others, and that's been intentional. I think that our CEO has really challenged us to do those sorts of things, to be progressive, to be out in front of these things, to be prepared, to communicate. And so we've made an effort to do that. And I think that that's one thing that, I hope, and certainly for me personally, as well as to the rest of the organization, is that we really continue this effort around enhanced communication. Because I think that when you have information that displays preparedness, that equals confidence. And I think that whether that's to customers or whether that's to employees that are nervous, that are scared, the unknown, that have the stresses at home, they've got the unknown at work. And I think, putting that thought and preparation into here's how we're thinking through this. We're not shooting from the hip. We're not just kind of making this up as we go, although we have to in some cases because there's no playbook. But the point is that it's thinking as you go, and even if you're trying to figure it out, you're thinking through it and then preparing a thoughtful response and a direction as a company. And I think that that's something that I think we did communicate before. I don't mean to say that we didn't, sure. But I think that having gone through this, it's focused us again and onto communication and the importance of that and the benefits of that. And I think that we have seen a lot of positive benefits and received some good feedback around the appreciation of that, both from customers as well as from employees, of that detail and that planning and communication around that. So I'm glad you noticed it, and I think we want to continue to do that going forward.
Yeah, I would encourage a lot of companies that, if they aren't already, to take a look at that. It builds trust in people, and some of it trust is about honesty and transparency and vulnerability. Like you said, you don't always know exactly what the answer is, and it's okay to say that. And I think people that trust builds when you have that level of vulnerability to say, here's what's going on, here's what we're doing about it, here's our well thought out plan, and here's some of the stuff that is still a little bit unknown or uncertain.
That's right.
It's a good thing. Last thing, I always wrap up with this. There's all kinds of stuff going on, and we're all dealing with it the best we can. I think your organization's dealing with it really well, from what I can see and from what I've heard. But with all this going on, what keeps you positive and hopeful for the future as we're all going through this together?
Sure. I think you touched on it early on when we first started talking, and I think that's around people's innate interest and ability to pull together. And I think that, certainly we've got challenges throughout the world, whether it's dealing with COVID or societal issues or things of that nature that inevitably create some strain between people. And we as a human race have dealt with that forever. And it'll never be perfect. But I think that what you also see is that people are drawn to come together. And even through the midst of challenges that you're facing and wins and losses that you'll have along the way, I think that people will ultimately pull together. And I think that we've seen that, here within our own company, that I think that people have communicated in many ways more effectively with one another, even with greater challenges in that communication of, for example, people working from home if they didn't have to be on site and having to leverage technology. And I think people found a way to connect with one another reach out proactively, even when it's less, more difficult to do it. It's less convenient to do it than what you would find in the office setting. So I think it's that just natural draw that people want to come back together. They want to work together and they want to figure it out. And the vast majority of people are trying to do the right thing. We just need to help get them in the right place to make it happen, and people will do it. And so I think that seeing that firsthand gives you hope that we can, at the end of the day, we're going to get through all the challenges that we're facing. We have for thousands of years, and we'll continue to do it going forward. And so that's what gives me hope.
Yeah, well said. I agree with that. I have great faith in the goodness of humankind. There's problems out there. There always will be. We have to address those. But people come together, and we're seeing that more than ever in this situation. And I love the stories that you shared with us about what's going on there at Balchem. I think the folks who watch this will find it not just interesting, but inspirational. So really appreciate you taking the time in a very busy time for you right now and sharing that inside look with us. Wish you the best moving forward. And maybe, in a few weeks we can catch up again and get another update as this situation continues to evolve. And just best wishes to you and all the good folks there at Balchem.
Oh, it was a pleasure, John. Really appreciate the opportunity and look forward to catching up with you in the future.
All right. Thank you very much, Brent.
Thank you.